To our Rural Community Board meeting. I see we have a full house, so thank you. No need for apologies. So the first thing I'll do is invite Judd to open the meeting with a karakia.
Kia ora, Mr. Chair. Karakia timitanga. Kia uru mai, aho ora, aho kaha, aho maia, ki runga, ki raro, ki waho, reri, hau pai marie. Kia ora tātou. Thank you.
Thank you, Judd. Oh, I got the order around the wrong way. Apologies, but we have none. Declarations of interest, do we have any? Okay, there are none, so we'll move on to confirmation of the minutes of our last meeting. So I'll move that they be accepted as a true and correct record.
I'll second that.
Can I have a seconder?
Yes.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion on that? Okay, so in that case, I'll move the minutes of the Whanganui Rural Community Board held on the 14th of August are confirmed as a true and correct record. All in favour?
Aye.
And against? Thank you. Carried. So the next item on our agenda is a presentation from Alistair Duff, and you should have heard, he has sent quite a lot of detail on his presentation through on email. It's not actually in the agenda, so hopefully you've all had it.
It is in the agenda under public forum.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yep. So thank you, Alistair, for giving us a heads up with what you've sent through. Mm-hmm. And so you have 5 minutes to sort of speak to your concerns.
Okay. Well, thanks very much for the to the board for having me here today. It's a bit of a concern for myself and for a group of residents out at Lake Ruatoa, Kaitoki area. There is a bit of a backstory to the subdivision issue. I purchased a piece of land, 1 hectare block of land out there in 2021-ish, and at the time part of my due diligence was to come and see the council planning department and talk to them about the possibilities of what was happening with the bigger parcel of land that was further down the driveway, the right-of-way access. There is a right-of-way access over my land to this lot 4, which is about 8 hectares. Part of that, part of me doing my due diligence was to check that I know that the chap, the owner developer that developed the original subdivision wanted to put more sections down the back, and another 8 sections actually, and he was denied permission to do that through the council consent process for various reasons, and his idea in the end was to only do 4 and to keep the bigger plot for himself to build a dwelling on. Coincidentally, he ended up selling that to a developer, a local Whanganui developer, and they have applied to put 8 sections down there, and they had that turned down, and for good reason, I think. And now they have applied for consent for 3 sections, and that consent has been granted as far as a 223 goes, which is their initial consenting stage. My major concern is the Whanganui regulation, the council regulations for subdivision, is that after between 4 and 6 properties on an access way, you need to have 6.5 metres of width for that access. Now, to fill in the blanks, the access way is currently about 400 metres long as a single 3.6 metre wide lane.
So this is access
access to the lot 4, which is the end. So to access to all the properties on that lane is only 3.6 metres wide. Right.
And does some of this, you mentioned a right of way, does some of this go through
So
your
this is
property?
all on right of way land on other people's, on like part of my land has got a right of way over it, and part of my neighbour's land has got a right of way over it. So she's involved as well. So
Clarify,
Yep.
you're talking 3.6 metres of shell rock, say?
Yep.
Or 3.6 metres is the actual easements width?
no, 3.6 metres of shell rock. So it's a bit, actually, the shell rock area is a little bit wider than that, but the easement width that the council allows is 3.6 metres for a single lane, basically. After you go to 4 to 6 properties, it has to be 6.5 metres wide for the access, so you effectively have 2 lanes. And being 400 metres long on a single access way with a rise where you can't see around the corner and over the rise, it actually is to my view, it's like if I was going one way and somebody was towing a trailer the other way, we'd be in a real situation where somebody would have to try and back up, right? And it's not ideal. It's not a great system, a great way of doing it. My problem comes with this resource consent, the 223 that has been issued to these developers to put the other sections down the back. The council has allowed the engineer has allowed them to use 4 metres to extend the 3.6 to 4 metres, which is still only a single lane. And they've used, what do they call their ability to bend the rules a little bit, to use 4 metres instead of the 6.5 that they should be having. I talked to planning after this. I mean, it's a concern because right now there's a fencer out there, and he's fencing off all the sections. It hasn't had a survey yet, but he's fencing off all the sections, and he's fencing off 4 additional properties down the back, plus there's one at the front which is undersized, which is another issue. But he's fencing off 4 different blocks down the back. So a sensible person would say they're planning on not only having 2 down there, they're planning on having 4 down there. And I just want to know what the actual regulation is there for, and if there's any way that I can get the rural board and councillors to sponsor a letter to the CEO to have this an inquiry into what's going on, because there seems to be rules being broken all over the place for no good reason. Part of my investigation into what was happening is I did go back to planning with my neighbour, with Tracy Jarman, and we had a meeting with Caroline, who was very good. She was very, very clear on some of the things that she mentioned. We had 22 questions of things of interest to ask about this document, where some parts were clearly in conflict with the rule, with the regulation, and she basically said that she took all our questions, and she would get back to the engineer and to planning and see what they said. They came back with some answers, but I probably shouldn't describe how I feel about some of the answers.
No, I think that's very wise, Alistair.
Yeah, pretty wise, yeah. But to say the least, some of the answers are not clear or accurate, according to the law of Mr. Duff. I think the other little thing that we needed some clarification on, and for me is a really big thing, as an ex-rural board member, is a really big thing for rural people, is the planners have decided that it's okay for a rural general zone to be less than 1 hectare. So there's one section that they're trying to subdivide off in the rural general area that is less than a hectare. It's only 4,300 square metres. Now, there is a claim that is orphaned land. In fact, it's not. It's still connected to the main block, and that you know that it is okay to subdivide that off. Now, I don't personally think it is. The regulations say it's not, and I'd like to see some thoughts on that. The little 1 hectare, a little small plot of land used to have a wool shed, a stables, some implement sheds, and a set of yards on them, and the new developer demolished it to make it look like, well, in my view, to make it look like it was a orphaned piece of land, whereas prior it was part of the farm. So there's a few things that have gone on that I think that maybe the council are not 100% sure of, and I don't know whether there's much that. Yeah, I'm not sure whether there's much more I can do apart from bring it to your attention and ask that if there was any possibility that the board could ask the CEO to have a look at it and see what's happening.
Okay, thank you, Alistair. Has anybody got any questions at this stage? Okay, so you are concerned that council are not following their own rules with aspects of the consent granted for the subdivision?
Yeah, the first consent, the 223, which is the first process when somebody applies for a subdivision. They have the council has a look at it to see whether in fact the piece of land is subdividable, or I mean, put it this way, I asked the planner if I could cut my 1 hectare block in half and put a house down the bottom, and she said don't even bother. So there are several examples of that where my neighbour wanted to buy a 5 hectare block and wanted to subdivide off 1 hectare, but because it was land zoned zone 3, where is it called? What's it called? Class 3 soil, then she wasn't allowed to. The planners just said don't bother. And this area is all class 3 soils. So there shouldn't be any subdivision happening after this new rule. So I don't understand how many different things that they can be broken, the rules can be broken, and yet the subdivision still gets to go ahead.
Certainly I know of a subdivision closer to where I live where it didn't happen because the soil was class 3.
Mm.
And so, if I can just clarify, are you affected significantly by having, with your right-of-way, with having all these houses that will be accessing through your right-of-way?
Yeah, well, my concern is it's narrow and there's no turning room. People use my driveway, my entranceway, as a three-point turn to turn around when they get down the end. But the bigger concern is that because where the access way is and where my building is at the moment, it's right at the top of a hill. My building is only 5 metres away from the access road, and the access road will be from the top of the rise down to where they turn around the corner to go at the bottom, will be a good 300 metres. So they're going to be going past my place at a rate that I dare not think feasible.
So you have, in your view, the planners haven't followed their own rules,
No.
and you have asked the question as to why,
Yeah,
and you are not happy with the response.
that's right. And keep in mind that before buying the property, I came to the planners and said, what are the chances of somebody carrying on with this development and developing it? And they said none, because the lane access was only narrow.
Right, is everybody clear what we're dealing with here? So, your mission in coming here today is to try and get the answers that you're not, ask council if we can have the answers that you're not getting?
Yeah, well, I think yeah, basically, yeah. I'm looking for answers to options. If somehow they could go back to the table and look at this and say, actually, we've missed a few things here, and we need to relook at it. And I think, from what I understand, the only person who can really do that is the CEO. I've brought up two things that are of major concern to me, but my neighbour's got a lot of others as well, like rainwater drainage, stormwater drainage, pipes that should have easements that got signed off initially without an easement. So last time when they did the first subdivision, they signed off on the subdivision with the 224 for title without getting an easement for drain water that goes across somebody's land. So there's a succession of mistakes.
So I think we're all clear that you consider you have a case that council are not following the rules. You don't feel you're getting satisfactory answers. So really, and I'll be asking for comment from the rest of the board, really all we can do is decide how we can, or whether we are in agreement that we advocate on your behalf. And I think to begin with, that will probably be asking, seeing if we can get a response to the questions that you're asking. So I think what I'll do now is I'll thank you for your presentation, unless there's any more questions of Alistair.
Just one more, Alistair. What do you see as your ideal solution?
Well, I mean, there's a really easy one to start with. If they're only like planning on doing the two sections down the back, there's the original access way driveway that the farm track had, which is behind one, right beside the current one, that they could develop into a road that then fences off and pushes that driveway back another 4 metres away from my place, and gives me a little bit of insulation from them. They could develop that very, very easily and use that as their access way. And I'm not understanding why they're not doing that. It doesn't make any sense apart from money. And I have to be very, very honest. I think all they're really after is money. Like, they're trying to develop to make money. And that's fair enough. I kind of feel sorry for them because I think they bought into this thinking that they were going to be allowed to develop it, and then they've been sold a bit of a fish, So that would be an easy answer for the access way, but they need to look at drainage. They need to look at all of those other things that come along with developing a property, developing a subdivision like any other developer, rather than cutting corners.
Okay.
Yeah, how many residents on that road at the moment?
Well, there's three.
Three?
Currently three. So
and how many are they?
They're wanting to add another 3, which takes them up to, like, if you go over 6 according to council rules on that single lane access way, then, or on an access way private road, then it needs to be changed to a full council road at full council widths, which I think from memory is about 15 metres, and they can't do that.
I suppose the law's perfectly clear on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Helen?
No, just
have
have
you got a
comment.
question,
No,
or,
no question.
So you're all happy if I thank Alistair for his presentation, and we will discuss whether or not we think there's a role for us to advocate for.
Sure. There's lots of information available that I can give to people individually if they need it.
Okay.
But hard to present it in 5 minutes. But yeah. So thank
No,
you.
I think we've got the big picture.
Yeah.
And that's all we need at this stage.
Sure. Cool.
We'll certainly be getting back to you if depending on how the discussion goes.
Okay. Well, thanks very much for the opportunity.
Thank you for making the
Yeah.
effort to provide us with the information and then come along here today to present.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, can I have comments, please, Helen?
Yep. Thank you. I'd like to thank Alistair for presenting today. I did meet with him the other day. He contacted me separately to have a chat. I didn't know what it was about at that stage, so at least I've got a bit more background. It was really good. Look, I think the only option available to us is to refer this back through the CEO for him to look at further, and it would be good to have an officer report come back to this committee, either generally about what's happening with rural subdivisions and that could then reference why they've made decisions or what they're still thinking about in terms of what Alistair has raised. Personally, I mean, that's not my concern, is that's 2 months away, I think, for our next committee meeting, and they may need to look at resolving what Alistair has raised before that, but that could still go ahead. But I think it would be quite good to understand generally what officers are thinking about subdivisions. So,
Ross, would you like to comment?
I concur with Councillor Craig. It's not within our remit to explore this any further. We don't have any authority other than to refer it on, as Deputy Mayor has mentioned. What I would note is that I studied the material that was supplied and I listened very carefully to Alistair. There are more questions coming out of this than what's in Alistair's documents. It's quite broad. It covers a whole bunch of regulatory frameworks, and it seems very clear that it needs to go to an officer who can clarify the matters. And this is recorded as well, so the officers can refer to this and a system as to where they're going to take this. And I think a report coming back in general, as well as that, fine, no problem.
Okay, so if I just confer with the council staff here, it would be appropriate for us to move a motion asking council to...
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, we don't do any resolutions at this. So
Okay.
we conclude the discussion now.
So,
You make a decision.
so if we're going to ask council to look into this and report back to us, what's the procedure for doing that?
As chair, you could reach out to the chief executive and request a report come to the next meeting on the matter that's been discussed.
Okay.
Will
But
be
we don't-
included on
but
the
we don't
agenda?
pass a resolution to
Don't
that
make a
effect.
decision on this.
Mr. Chair, could I make a comment?
Certainly.
The advice from democracy is that we don't make a decision on when. I don't think we are making a decision. We're just making a decision to refer this matter to the CEO for his review. So that would be a motion number one, I would have thought. And then number two, for report to come back to the next board meeting. So that would be 2 resolutions, that this matter is referred to the CEO for his review, and the second motion is that officers report back at the next Rural Community Board meeting with general overview of the circumstances pertaining to rural subdivisions. How's that?
That's correct. So essentially, besides the only motion that can be moved today is to request a CE and a report to come to the next meeting. No other action can be made at this meeting today.
Okay. So,
Can I ask a point of clarification, probably through to Governance Chair? This, whatever comes back to us at the next available possible meeting, will the resident receive communication of that before it gets to us? I just need to know that for Alistair's benefit. Like a no surprises thing, that he knows what the officers are saying, he knows what will be presented to us. Is that standard practice that could happen? Or is that up to the CE?
That sits with the CE, but usual process is that I'm sure officers would reach out to obtain any information that they needed to understand the matter, and then there would be some direct contact between Alistair and officers.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, also point for clarification, if I may.
Certainly.
This is a public meeting, so, and I think as a point of courtesy, we would always invite a submitter to come back to a future meeting or give them a Zoom link so that they are kept up to date with what's going on. I think that would be something we would expect to happen anyway. Secondly, just to clarify that when the officers will come back to this meeting to report on this matter, there is no decision that I believe that the Rural Community Board have to make on this matter. It is operational about their decision making in terms of rural subdivisions. It is not, but we could, it would be the bigger takeaways we would take an understanding that may lead to something else. But in terms, I think it's just important for Mr. Duff to know that this, like a council meeting, cannot make a decision on something like a subdivision or whatever. It's purely within the realms of operational. I think that's just important.
No, it could just better inform us in terms of what future advocacy we might undertake.
Exactly, David. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So we're just working on a resolution. So we have a resolution here that the Community Board asks the Whanganui District Council, CE, to investigate Mr. Duff's concerns regarding a rural subdivision consent at 153 Kaitoki Road, and that an officer report on this matter be referred back to the Rural Community Board at their meeting on the 20th of November. So are we happy with that? We don't want to suggest any wording before I ask for a mover.
I did move those already.
Oh, you've already done it.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I think that B perhaps should read that an officer report on rural subdivisions, rural subdivision issues,
Oh, yes, that's
as be referred back. Yeah, issues be. Yeah, that's right. Issues be referred back to. Yeah. That an officer report on rural subdivision issues as raised in the submission be referred back.
as raised in this submission.
Yeah, so
Or
it's
or
not specific to the submission, it's more general.
As raised in Mr. Duff's submission.
Yes, yeah, that would be fine. So I'm happy to move both of those.
Can I ask a question, Chair?
Yes,
May I?
of course.
Okay, this is for the presenter's benefit. So, motion A to investigate at that address, I've got that. CE has that referred to him and his officers, got that. We get a report in general about rural subdivision potential issues that Mr. Duff has raised. We're not going to specifically have his issues responded to in an open session. It's up to the CE, if I'm right, the CE or whoever he delegates to will be in contact with and communicate with Alistair as to what they found and what they're going to do, but that won't be part of the presentation in November. That won't come back to us specifically. We'll have a more general topic coming to us in Part B. Is that what you're saying, Councillor? Sorry, Deputy Mayor?
Yes, I think that's generally would be my expectation, yeah.
Yep.
I would think.
Need a seconder.
Yes, well, I'm happy with that because depending on what one comes back, we can then decide how we're going to proceed after that. If If we think we need more information, we can but ask. Okay, so can I have a seconder for that, please? Grant Skilton. So is there any further discussion? No? Okay, thank you. I shall put that motion as outlined up there. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? It's carried. Thank you. And thank you, Alistair. Okay, so we'll move on to the next item, which is an application to the Whanganui Rural Community Board Community Grant Funds. Well, the first one we're not doing, are we?
No, it's deferred due to illness.
Okay, so we're at 6.2, application to the Rural Community Board Rural Community Fund, Te Araha Pamarai Complex Community Celebration in November 2024. And Rena, you're welcome to come and present your application. Thank you. Go and sit where Alistair was and push the right hand button.
On that one.
Yep, you're onto it. Thank you.
Okay, kia ora. So, what am I doing? Just introducing myself or just waiting for questions? I'm not sure. Sorry, I've never done this before.
So perhaps if you just outline in your own words what it is you want to what it is you're going to do and what you would like to achieve with,
Sure.
with this.
So we're hoping to bring in different people from the community to be able to run some activities so we can celebrate 10 years of our marae build. And I think this will help with engagement, with us to engage with outside of our marae, as well as make it a special, because it is a special time for a lot of our uri of Te Aroha Pā, Kaiwi, to be able to come together and, just celebrate that and then look forward to the next 10 years. With the activities, besides the celebration side of things, I mean, we'll be having from all ages, so face painting, hopefully we can get that. We'll also be putting on food, as well as using some ringatoi, so some of our artists. We've got a rāranga artist lined up to come, and a kapahaka group as well. Te Taikura, I think the name of the rōpū is, here in Whanganui. So that could be about 20, 30 of them. So yeah, and we'll have a few people to feed as well. So hopefully that makes sense.
So you'll be looking to get quite a number of people from outside your actual marae to help celebrate this occasion.
Yes.
So, Ross.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, your first one. You've done it. Well done.
Thank you.
Can be nerve-wracking, can't it? 3 short questions. Just to educate me, is this celebration specifically marae or hapu specific in nature, or has it got a broader welcome going on associated with it? Because it says to celebrate the complex, so it's local focus support.
Yeah, so our uri is made up of people that whakapapa back to that area.
Ah, okay.
And a lot of them are scattered throughout the world. So it's kind of like hopefully an enticement to come back to there.
Like a welcome home.
There, yeah.
Okay. And how many are you sort of thinking you're catering for?
So I've put 100 people on there.
Could be more.
Yeah, hopefully. The more the
Okay.
merrier.
Okay. And my last question is, and I'm being very selfish here because I am learning te reo,
Okay.
but I don't know these words, if you could help me out. If I pronounce it correctly, maramataka is what?
So maramataka is it's faith-based, like from Christianity. Yeah.
Okay. And I know wharitapa or waritapa, wa model.
Yeah, so that's the four hauora, like the health aspects of Te Ao Māori. So our, our mind, our physical health, our spiritual side, and there's another one that's just gone out of my mind, but there's four of them.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I appreciate you helping me. Thank you.
That's all. You're welcome.
So are you going to some trouble to try and spread the word quite widely to try and get as many
Yeah, sure.
people with an association with your marae involved?
So we have a Facebook group, and there's roughly around about 400 people on just that private group alone. So the flyer's gone out to say when the date is, which is, I believe, is the 23rd of November. And yeah, we will just be tapping different family, whānau, hapu, to come along and pop in and enjoy.
Okay. Thank you.
And even Kaiwi School, like there's been, so 10 years ago I wasn't a part of the build. We're inviting people who were at the beginning stages of as well, who helped get that complex up and going. So there were various people from our own uri, our own family, but also outsiders. I think the person where we got the funding from through the Lotteries Commission back when, I think an invite's gone out to that person as well. So yeah, there's a invite list happening at the moment of people that we'd like to just thank and honour.
And so you'll be including some of the neighbours and local
Yes.
community. And,
Yeah,
even if
absolutely.
they don't have a direct association with your marae.
I think there has been a direct association. I mean, my own mother and all her family, we've been in Kaiwi at that particular space for about 67 years. So my own family is ahikā of that space, and a lot of my mum and all her siblings, actually, they went to the Kaiwi school. So there's a bit of a bit of that going on as well, if that makes sense. We've got history.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions?
Yes. Yes, I have some questions here. Kia ora, thank you for your delivery. Are you fundraising? Is this fundraising? Are you fundraising outside of the marae group? Are you fundraising with other options besides this?
This is the only one
Right.
that we've applied to. Yeah.
Okay. On the day, you mentioned artists and others being involved. Are they doing a volunteer presentation, or are they actively marketing their products, or to tautoko this kaupapa?
I think initially it's just tautoko, people that we know. We're going to reach out to Te Puni Kōkiri and different organisations for activities around maramataka.
Ka pai, can you just give us a definition of maramataka?
Yeah, so the maramataka is in Te Ao Māori, we use the moon phases to be able to, to live, I suppose. Me personally, I use it for my own work, my own mahi. So with the moon, it sometimes can set your mood. So for example, there's in the moon phases, there's a part where it's called whiro. So whiro is usually marked as a red day, so not a very good day. So on those kinds of days, I try not to schedule too much meetings and stuff like that.
Kia ora. I'm aware of maramataka. I was just wanting to see how you used it in your environment.
And I think we'll use it for our for the fishing side of things.
Right.
And also we're learning as we go with the ringatoi, with the artists, and how they can work along side by side. So there's a whole mātauranga learning going on as well.
Is this structured all for the day?
Oh, it's just structured every day.
It's a living marae, te
Yeah,
aroha?
we're starting to go. I've just recently moved here from Tamaki, so just able to bring my skills and my knowledge back to my wānau, and really.
Okay. How many people are on this kaupapa in the organising group?
So we have a trusteeship of 7. I'm one of them.
Are they 7 organised on this fundraising kaupapa?
So me and another trustee are overseeing the
Yes.
project,
Yep.
and we just report back to the trusteeship. Yes,
Do you have a group pushing it, or
just me and another person.
Right. Okay.
But input from the other trustees, and is also from our own uri. If they'd like to feed into it, they have that opportunity as well, which one of them has already. Yeah.
Ka pai. And you're ahi ka from Te Aroha? Mm-hmm. Do you mind if I ask your surname?
My married name is Salipa, but my maiden name, my mum's family, they're Broughtons, married to
excellent.
the Teoro family. Yeah, my grandfather.
Kia ora whananga. Kia ora, thank you very much.
No worries.
Okay, thank you. So if there's no further questions, the format we've been using is that if you leave the room for a few minutes,
Okay.
the board discusses the application,
Sure.
and then we'll let you know what the board's decision is.
Okay.
So if you could do that,
Thank you,
we
David.
will have a discussion and let you know straight away.
Excellent. Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, so we have this application. Do I have any comments? Okay. Right.
I'm like a jack in the box, so apologies.
Shall I ask? We have the recommendation that the Wanganui Rural Community Board approves $1,000 in funding from the Rural Community Grant Fund to support a marae complex 10-year celebration at Te Araha Pa Marae in November 2024. So if I can have a mover and a seconder for that. So Jenny's going to move it. Helen's going to second it. So do we have any comments, discussion? Ross, sorry.
Chair, it's procedural. If we look at item 6 on page 24, it's minor, but it can be amusing. It says, and it does, the application aligns with WRCB grant funding policy. I'm just wondering if we could change our grant funding policy, cough, to grant.
I think
Just put a T.
I'm happy with grand.
We're not that grand with our money.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ross. We will change that.
I'll make one comment.
Yeah, thank you, Helen.
I'd like to thank the submitter and their application. Sounds like a great community event. It's the first community grant application that I've looked at in my new role here on the board, so I wasn't sure what other grants, in this type of area of community gathering you have done, and so I had to consider, is that what the Rural Community Grants Fund should be used for? And I guess if there were a whole lot of demands on that fund, you would look at criteria, at other wider criteria, but this certainly meets the criteria in terms of bringing the community together. I think in terms of the rural community really need that. I think that's a really vital part of being in the rural community, is getting together. So I think it sounds like a really good idea for my first
Thank
thing.
you.
But you all of you who have sat here for longer and might have different thoughts, but it was interesting.
Thank you. Anyone else like to comment?
Are there any other halls out in that area? Are there any other community halls out in that area?
Yes, there is. There's a community hall with Kaiwi School.
Right, yep.
There's probably about 3 maraes in that area.
Great, excellent. I was just thinking about
within
the
100 metres.
possibility of using their marae sometime for community delivery.
Okay, yeah, well this is we have an extra grant. No, yeah, it's your
Oh,
turn.
just it sounds like a very broad community event rather than a that we should support it. There's not a lot of other funding which meets our criteria. Other funding available for such events, and for seed funding for such an event. Yes,
Okay.
happy to support.
Okay, thank you. Well, I will put the motion then that the Wanganui Rural Community Board approves the $1,000 in funding from the Rural Community Grant Fund to support a marae complex 10-year celebration at Te Arahapa Marae, November 2024. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That is carried. Thank you very much. Yes. Yes. So the next item on the agenda is item 6.3. Thank you, Rena. You've been successful. Your application has been granted. Thank you very much for making the effort to come and talk to us about it. It was a great help. It really was.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Item 6.3, Rapanui Road Trail Update. Quentin Handley has kindly agreed to come along and update us as to how this project is progressing, bearing in mind that council have decided that no ratepayer funding will be involved. Over to you, Quentin. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think I did a presentation here about a year ago on the same thing. I'll be brief. The council has approved some funding in the future, which we all know may or may not happen. So what we've had to do is try and do some fundraising. So to that end, the group is still committed to the trail, and we have set up a trust, and so that we can have a fundraising entity. We are employing a professional fundraiser, a lady called Jenny Giblin from Hawke's Bay, who was involved in fundraising for various things, including the Sargent Gallery. And to that end, we're having a meeting with her shortly. She's outlined a proposal so that she can approach various funding entities on our behalf. In the interim, we've managed to secure some funding from the Duncan Trust to cover her costs in the interim, and we'll proceed along those lines. Also, what has come about recently is that we have been speaking with Downer, the contractors. They have an obligation to help the community in various forms, and so they have indicated that they could well be able to do some work gratis to make a start. And to that end, with the trail, one of the things we're keen to get going, and of course with the Westmere School, is to make the trail from the school to the Westmere Lake so the kids don't have to get on a bus to go to their nature studies at the lake. And so Downers may be able to help make a start on that. So there's planning underway there. There's been some design work done, and we're just proceeding along those lines, and hopefully if we can get some decent funding, we might be able to make a start on another stage in the near future. So that's basically where we're at, and we're just letting you know that we haven't given up and we're still full steam ahead.
Okay, thank you, Quentin. Any questions? Ross?
Sorry. Hello. Very exciting. I'm a fan. Are you still focused on, I think the word is a compacted shell rock approach, or from the get-go with Downer's support, are you looking at a concrete 2 metre path, whatever?
The shell rock is the cheapest and simplest option at this point.
Shell rock.
Yeah, yeah. And of course people say, well, you know, is that a suitable trail? But you'll find if you've been cycling all over the country, those sort of compacted fine trails are what are the majority in these sort of circumstances. And obviously in our region, they work quite well. We all know that shell rock is a great medium. And then other people say, well, what about your maintenance? But if it's built correctly and it has correct slopes so that there's a reasonable amount of drainage and it's maintained significantly, that it shouldn't really be a problem. Of course, the council will have to take care of maintenance, but I think that it won't be a very major expense, especially in the first maybe 10-15 years in any case.
So it's a shell rock pathway,
Yeah, about 1,200 wide generally.
and once that's in place, let's say it's the whole length, let's say you get funding for the whole length, at some point in 10 or 15 years time or somewhere in that time period, it would need to be a concrete path.
Oh, I don't think necessarily.
Okay.
That would be very expensive path,
Yeah.
I imagine. I've ridden on trails all over the country. For instance, you can do the Otago Rail Trail in the South Island, which is just pretty rough gravel with some quite heavy stones in places, and that seems to survive quite nicely. So different weather conditions perhaps, but I think here where we've got good drainage and the soil conditions are such that it won't be subject to erosion in any case, I don't think it would really be a major issue.
Thank you.
Also, bearing in mind that there is another cycle velodrome in the city which costs, I think, the insurance for that is, what is that, an annual insurance, $50,000? So I don't think the cost of maintaining the trail will be very significant.
I might make a couple of points there. And I think part of the problem with getting these cycle tracks funded is we get far too carried away as to how blooming good they should be. I think tar seal or concrete is a complete overkill for a rural bike track situation, and of course the extra cost associated with it means it's so much more difficult to get underway. And the other aspect, which I discovered the other day, I was talking to a runner. The only tar seal concrete potential running track in Whanganui is round Virginia Lake. And a lot of these runners like to get off concrete and tar seal. And so I think the distance running people would appreciate having a track like this, so it wouldn't just be cyclists that were using it.
Well, and bear in mind that we're not advocating it to be a cycle trail. It's just a trail that people can walk, or they can push a pushchair along. You know, in this case, we're hoping that the school will utilise it. Obviously, the school can then take their children on bikes to the Basin Botanical Reserve and back again quite safely. People can ride out to the Basin, or drive to the Basin Reserve and ride from there either way. The Basin Reserve is also looking at putting a similar cycle trail as a loop around the reserve itself, so that's another added bonus to be had. So I think, you know, there's more to it than just a cycle trail, and I'm sure that from our discussions with a lot of the residents, they all said, oh, we can walk down the road to see our friends and so on and so forth. Our kids can bike backwards and forwards quite safely doing those sort of things, which we used to do as kids when the road wasn't nearly as busy as it is now. So that's our rationale.
Thank you. Brian?
Just excuse me, I'd like to agree with Quinton. I had to talk to loaders about shell rock with Alan Loader, and he's suggesting that put in properly with the right camera and the right drainage, it'll last 10 to 15 years, and then minimal maintenance after that. So it's not something that you have to, would ever want to go to concrete. It can be maintained, which I think is a good idea. And Quinton's right, it's not only for cycling, it's for walking and doing anything else you want to do. But there is a lot of traffic on that road now. You're quite right.
Oh, it has got, well, there's more people living at the beach, of course. There's been subdivisions out there, and there's other subdivisions coming along, I believe, as well. So everyone is backwards and forwards all the time, builders and so on. So it has got to the point now where I know a lot of people that won't ride on the road anymore because it's simply too dangerous. And some people have also said they've had some very scary moments over the last few years. So it's got to the point where it's actually quite dangerous. So that's what we're trying to avoid, so people can come and use it. And also when visitors with motorhomes and so on go to the motor camp, they've got nowhere to ride their bicycles, and a lot of visitors are travelling the country and motorhomes have bikes and they just want to be able to get out and ride, and it certainly means that if they can do that, then they can ride to town and spend some money or do whatever they need to do. There's also historical things on the route as well that we can advocate for. So.
Okay, thank you. One question I'd like to ask is, are there points on the existing road where it is more dangerous, where the road's perhaps a bit narrow or got no shoulder, where it's actually more dangerous for cyclists, pedestrians, than other spots? So what I'm thinking of, would there be an argument to ask council, for safety reasons, to provide an alternative for bikes and walkers off the current road?
Yeah, well, there are a couple of places, especially around Westmere Lake, where the road is quite narrow. There's not much room for a cyclist to get on the berm. That's why we're trying to initially have the trail on the side of the road there to avoid that particular area. And now, of course, they've reduced the speed to 80 k's now, which is quite sensible. No one complains about that. But also, about halfway along Rapanui Road, there is a corner which has a bank on the inside, and I know from experience, you take your life into your hands when you're riding around there, because someone can come around the corner behind you without seeing you, and a car can be coming the other way, and you're very close. So there's no room for the cyclist to get off the road in that case. And the plan for the trail on that particular corner is to be on the outside of the corner, up on the bank, well away from the traffic. So,
thank you for that. My thinking is that possibly we could advocate using safety as a reason for getting some council funding for those areas.
Well, there is actually, the trail has been achieved to a small extent, about 400 metres on the hill that goes down to the Mawhanau beach itself, or the village, and the council had to do some drainage work and cut back the bank, and of course they've managed to seal another couple of metres wider on the road, which has enabled people to ride or walk up and down the hill quite safely behind some little barriers. So that's improved that safety aspect hugely, because that was very narrow down the hill as well.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions of Quinton? We need to keep the agenda moving along. Okay.
Good.
Thank you very much for making the effort,
For
Quinton.
the opportunity, yes. Good.
So we need a mover and seconder for the recommendation that the Wanganui Rural Community Board receive the report Rapanui Road Trail Update, October 2024. Some mover, please. Brian. Seconder. Judd.
Yes.
Thank you. Any further discussion? So I'll
Oh,
put.
sorry, David, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I
Helen?
do, sorry, yeah. I just want to thank the presenter and the group. I think it's sounds like the project is moving ahead really well and constructively. And I should have asked a question, I suppose, but in terms of keeping it to council's vision, I guess the presenters could present to the council
either during every annual plan, just to give them an update where they were, to keep it front and centre, and I'm sure council will be very interested in your updates, and at the next long-term plan is a good time to start advocating again, you know, to bring a bit of funding forward. So that's the time to do that sort of lobbying, I guess, unless there was something urgent in the meantime, but sounds like a really good plan. Well done.
Thank you. Okay, I'll put the motion there, I'll put the recommendation then that the Rural Board receive the report, Weaponry Road Trial Update, October 2024. We have a mover and a seconder, so all in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Quentin. So we now, item 6.4, the agribusiness update, October 2024. Colleen, you've provided us with a very good report, and I have to confess that I was reading it this morning. I had to Google biochar. So we've got about 8 to 10 minutes, Colleen, so.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so I got a 30-minute thing together.
Well, you provided us with all the background.
Yeah, but you get to see the pictures. Okay, so the purpose of our agribusiness. Oh, sorry, I should introduce the people at the table with me. So we have Neil and Janine Campbell to my left, and also Robert Irvine. Okay, the purpose of the agribusiness delegation, as you know, was to improve our relationships with our sister city, but also to help actually move Wanganui forward in terms of our opportunities for those relationships to grow into something bigger, partnerships, export opportunities, and also to look at how they do vertical integration and move from commodities to the next level in terms of manufacturing and producing food and fibre. So we went along on a 5-day trip, a very action-packed trip, and saw quite a few people. So that's right, yep. So that's our beautiful mug shot. No, there's more people that actually aren't in that picture. So this was prior to going to see NZTE in their place in Brisbane and what they do there. They have NZTE, so New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, have 22 customer managers sitting in Australia, and 1 in Suva. They have 4 in Brisbane, so that was where we were visiting, 7 in Sydney and 11 in Melbourne. They understand how best to organise supply chains. They have knowledge of the challenges and opportunities for people trying to export. They're quite aware that exporters or potential exporters need to know who their customer is and have a plan of how they're actually going to connect with them, the what and the why, not just turn up and expect someone to sell it for them. And you know, one of the things is they said that anyone trying to export need to get serious about putting people in those markets. So they identified, you know, places like or organisations like Fix and Fog, Manuka products and things that they try and, you know, support to get into the market over there. Brisbane itself focused on manufacturing, so they actually had some idea of what we have in New Zealand. And there was support for businesses wanting to export, but they won't do the selling. So, you know, it's really up to the business here to actually understand who their market is and have someone in that market. One of the biggest things they said was for any business looking to export to sign up to My NZTE, which is available for anyone in the first instance, and they can watch bite-sized videos of how to do business with different countries, the sort of things they need to have in place, and yeah, different aspects of exporting and how the countries operate. So that was really valuable. Sorry, they're all pictures of us doing stuff, really. Agri-Dry was a real eye-opener. Their equipment can process a wide range of commodities, such as grains, pulses, oil seeds and nuts. So as the name of the business suggests, they dry things, really, or they sell machinery that can dry things, from super large drying equipment down to small units for multi-use by community collectives. And the picture here is actually a medium-size dryer that's 10.5 square metres, transportable, and it can do batch or recirculating multi-commodity, and it fits into a 40-foot shipping container. Their largest dryer, which was called the Goliath, could hold 35 square metres. It can dry at a rate of 3% per hour, and had an upload speed of 36 tonnes per hour. So it was pretty big, and I think both Neil and Trevor were looking at buying two. No, they're interested anyway. We had a mayoral delegation with Brisbane. It was really, really good for those connections. We were there to support, well, we actually had a mayoral reception, I should say, but we were there to support the mayoral delegation, as well as introduce ourselves as agribusiness, which they were really excited about, because surrounding Toowoomba and basically all the places we went to, primary industries is the main industry. So it was really good to get ourselves around that table and get to know different people. We were put on different tables, so we basically spread ourselves out. Kaiala Organic Grain was another place that we went to, specialising in organic livestock feed, flour and pancake mixes. No, the animals don't eat pancakes, but they use the grains from start to finish. Basically, they made sure that there was good storage and they maintained quality. It was essential for their business. That they did also do conventional processing to make sure that they didn't have downtime on their assets. They used 11,000 litres of air per second. Obviously, these factories can get quite dusty and stuff, so they had air going through them all the time. They used CO2 to reduce weevils in their organic grain. 40% of their sales went to retail, so the rest were ingredient products, or basically ingredient products, or going into some sort of mix and off to wholesale sale. And there was no waste either. They'd also worked out that, as I said, that if it wasn't going to be for human consumption, they'd have it going into an animal feed. Boomeroo Nurseries was absolutely amazing and huge. It was like a big Tetris. They planted the seed and then grew them through to seedling for planting by farmers. There was only 16 people employed at the Toowoomba factory. It was a 7-day-a-week operation. Amazing technology. They aimed to achieve crop uniformity, yield, and reduce production costs. While it wasn't the cheapest way to plant, they found that it provided the best quality, and so what you had was the grower pack-out rates were in the high 90s, 90% as opposed to the competitors, which were in their mid-80s. And the transplant cost of the seedlings do cost more, but the efficacy of those seedlings to be able to then mature was well higher. It was a massive scale. It had grown from when they started in the 1990s from 35 million plants, seedlings, to now producing 315 million. And the longest crop took 65 days, which was your leek or your shallots, and the lettuce were 20 days. They also used minimal water, and because they had good irrigation, and they had hot water running through the pipes underneath the plants from May to August, to ensure that the plants were getting the heat that they needed to grow. They had a $45 million turnover. Actually, did I mention that? Oh, I did. 1.8 million plants going out per week. It was amazing, mind-boggling numbers. And they were also looking to add solar farming to the area, which was going to be like a $4 to $5 million investment, but that would also help in the cost of running their nursery. Yeah, that was that one. This slide's hard to read, but really it was part of a presentation that was given by TSB, so Toowoomba and Surat Basin Enterprise, which is the economic development agency in Toowoomba. They actually have a membership base rather than just being council funded. They have 600 members across health, education, professional services, energy, manufacturing, infrastructure, food and agriculture. So they get government grants from state and federal government for programs to support growth. For instance, TSB were given 1.8 million co-matched by a federal grant to grow exports into the exports in the region. So not into the region, but out of the region. Exports going out. There were private partnerships with mining and energy companies to fund agri-emerging markets program, Indigenous Business Connector program, Business Navigators, and then a hydrogen program. 3 regional council partners contributed differing amounts for economic development delivery. For instance, one regional council wanted inbound investment attraction and another wanted economic dashboards and fact sheets. So obviously the membership was tiered on what was expected as a result. So it wasn't just a one-size-fits-all and you tried to fill everything. And the TSB project manager actually said that he recognised Wanganui as being currently in the same place Toowoomba was 10 years ago. And when we went, they seemed very far advanced, so that was quite nice to hear. That was only 10 years. And they also offered to, like, how do we shrink that time for Wanganui to really get the gains? Biochar, I'm glad you've read up on it. So it's recognised by the IPCC as a carbon dioxide removal technology. So that's the International Panel on Climate Change. And so it's recognised as removing and durable storage of CO2 from the atmosphere. So the strength of Pyrocal was in dealing with costly waste and turning it into a valuable product. And that product, biochar, was used in construction, roads, concrete and agriculture. Heat from the system, so the actual machine that you see there, it was quite a lot of heat, could be utilised for drying or other products or as an energy source. The biochar itself was sold on the voluntary carbon market, and they reckon it ranged between 120 US to $200 per tonne, and they expected the carbon dioxide removal market revenues to grow globally from 300 billion to 1.2 trillion by 2050. Wellcamp Airport, that's that whole Wanganui to the world. And I know councillors would have seen a presentation from the mayoral delegation on this part. It's an airport that's privately funded to the tune of 48 million, and then it was matched with Australian government funding of the same. It's the home to the Qantas Pilot Academy, the Wellcamp Aerospace and Defence Precinct. Boeing Australia is leading the production and assembly of advanced unmanned aircraft systems, and the growth in Wellcamp Airport Precinct has attracted huge investment in high-skilled jobs to the region. It also has opened up valuable markets for the region, and they have a 90-minute turnaround for their 747 cargo planes, like the one you see here. That particular plane was loading Toowoomba's flower exhibition, which was going to be displayed at Singapore's Garden by the Bay Flower Dome. So the start of Toowoomba's Festival of Flowers, which was in September, coincided with Singapore's exhibition opening, and it closes in mid-November. One of our stealth farmer delegation noticed from the list of plants that they got shown that 40% of the overseas exhibition were made up of New Zealand natives. Apparently our plants are a lot more hardy. And Wellcamp's Wellcamp Airport's CEO said that if we built a decent runway, that they'd be willing to help us with freight connections. So it's something to keep in mind. CJ Nutricon. Now this was really this was eye-opening as well. What do you do with a whole lot of bones? Well, you make bone broth. So the parent company is the largest food distributor in South Korea, and when they decided to look for another site or where they could get these things, they actually looked in New Zealand, but we just didn't have enough bones. So they ended up settling for Australia. They utilise robots and have streamlined technology. They originally got from Korea the startup funds of $10 million US to start up in 2006. They received 120 metric tonnes of leg bone from the local community. It's now up to 340 tonnes. And I think Neil was trying to get some of his cow's bones over there. And so one thing that was really noticeable is Australia's Foreign Investment Review Board, which assesses where the foreign investments are in the national interest. Well, some of the criteria is they look at job creation and economic development. So it's not just, it's about where the money's staying and how it's being used and how that builds your economy. Yeah. Okay, and Western Downs Regional Council, this is probably something that needs to be talked to at council level. But however, they did quite a huge cultural change from being regulators to enablers over the last wee while. So they have planning schemes to make investment simple. They have a pragmatic approach to assessment. They are they have a highly competitive application process, and they support the applicant through the process. And they look for circular opportunities, how that can be used more to grow the economy. They also have a community partnering framework, which looks at, so what they do is if there's an issue, they assess it, they review it, develop, discuss, and then agree. And they have an agreed advocacy priority and approach to how they'll go forward with addressing that issue. Their big thing was the Brisbane Olympics. They wanted it to be carbon neutral. So they had quite a few priorities. Another priority was water. And if you think about it, every time you see a picture of inland Queensland, it's just desolate. It looks really, really dry. And yet they grow quite a lot of stuff. There's a lot of underground aquifers that they're not visible, but they're there. And if you think about it, it just happens that New Zealand's so close to the coast that we don't actually think about what's under the ground. They have to, pretty much. So their big four in terms of a diverse economy was agriculture, intensive agriculture, manufacturing and energy. And the energy was coal, solar, wind, gas, hydrogen and battery power, and renewable energy zones, so setting up actual zones on the land to work out what's coming before, like I suppose chucking a whole lot of houses in place and then going, oh, what about what else we can do? And now these houses are in the way. So, really, really interested to see how that area had grown. Western Downs is an hour inland, so an hour further west from Toowoomba, and they also mentioned that Wellcamp had attracted growth to their region in supply chain logistics and economics, so it had really grown the primary sector for them. They had 60 beef lots, which contained 185,920 cattle, 25 piggeries, which had under 200,000 pigs, and 200,000 cattle were sold annually. So it's pretty big business. Honestly, going to those feedlots, actually I'm onto the Kiwi feedlot now. So, okay, so here's a feedlot that we went to as a field trip. 20,000 head of cattle on a 3,000 acre, 3,000 acre farm, and they put the cattle right in the middle so it doesn't extend the odours. 10,000 Wagyu, 10,000 Angus. They had vertical integration, so they own 2,000 of their own Wagyu, and they were hoping to get up to 10,000 head of their own. What else can I tell you? I suppose that's farmy, is that the Angus or Wagyu grow 2.1 kilograms or 1.3 kilograms live weight growth per day, respectively, and they're on the farm for 100 to 200 days, growing from 400 pounds to 700 pounds. Hopefully that satisfies you. The farming numbers. There's trial work into how to reduce methane, and they were using Asparagopsis, which is seaweed, and some of that research has just come out recently. They said the profits were quite marginal, but what they'd actually done was been able to really use their brand, Stockyard Beef, to grow, to ensure they still got premium prices. So it's actually a case of being consistent, having a brand and sticking behind that brand, having quality that people can recognise. So they belong to the Australian Lot Feed Association, ALPHA, and the industry writes its rules. They work with government or with the regulators to write the rules so that it's actually workable rather than textbook based, realistic. So overall, the feedlots, it was quite interesting. The grain's purchased up to 18 months in advance of future market, and they were looking at, I think, one 20,000 cattle feedlot had over $100 million tied up in feed. So it's big business. The protein conference, one of our delegates said that he was just like, he just thought he'd have to sit through it and grit his teeth, but it was one of the best days. So it was quite interesting. The big thing was, like the actual subject was adapting to change and shaping the future of protein. But what it was talking about food security and the human right to food, and that the idea of food was changing considerably and almost being made as a nature problem rather than a solution. And that food was how we looked after present and future generations. That we also needed to look at how we, I suppose, ensure that every decision maker considers the ability to produce food, that food security is more than the ability just to grow it, but actually to ensure that it can be globally accessible, that global litigation regarding environmental outcomes is making everyone think about the human right to food as well, and that it's been recognised, or food has been recognised as an act of warfare. So food security should be set in law as a right. This is our pretty bunch. So also at the protein conference, besides addressing alternative proteins and things, they talked about lack of housing for workers. So it ended up being about agriculture as a whole. How do you attract people to the industry? How do you sell the ag sector and diverse careers that it offers? How do you innovate so that ag could compete with other jobs on a pay level, and embrace alternative protein or alternatives to commodities? And that was connecting science to enhance primary industry offerings. They also said that Aussie-grown soybean, for instance, was not competitive on price, and yet it could compete on known food quality and safety. So where does that premium come in? Where is that recognised? Nearly there. This is just an opportunity for farmers to walk around very, very, very big machinery. But these were like modern air seeders that were up to 24 metres wide. They had continued innovating. It started as a small shed and it had grown and expanded as land next door became available. They were currently building a new purpose-built manufacturing facility that is future-proof for ongoing growth. They have 80 employees and the direct wages were half the cost, so they have social responsibility costs as well of training, employees, housing, and they're always striving to improve the product. They'd also partnered with, this is quite a big business, a family-owned business. They'd also partnered to support other local businesses like a metal foundry and spray painting to ensure that those services were still in town because they were the connection to what they did, and they needed them to still be around. And then it's nearly last. Starman Webster was a high quality tree nut place. They supply America's off-season production. They sell to supermarket as a commodity nut. They also sell ingredients to other businesses. They don't value add. Other people add the chocolate or roasting or salting. There was a huge focus on safety and quality. Like we had to make sure we had no rings, necklace, anything. Coins in your pocket, nothing. The harvest equipment's all from America. They had 50 employees on site, 30 full-time, including maintenance people. They have been packing and exporting since the 80s. They mainly supply US, and they'd actually been able to show that in the last 10 years the nut consumption had grown. And their focus was on everything being owned by the company, including the farms, so they were really vertically integrated to retail. Their energy source was electricity through gas-fired gas-fired for heating. And they had 6 really large storerooms that held 200 tonnes each, and they'd already done 2,500 tonnes of pecan that season. Right, finally, that's us on the last day. So the overall conclusions were that infrastructure is important, transport links, location of raw product and how to transport it to market. There was power in working together. Vertical integration was important, right to retail where possible. Overall, number 1 was quality, 2 was reliable supply, and 3 was price. They used modern technology and continued innovating. They looked at robots, obviously computers and monitoring. Always undertake product improvement and development. They looked after their staff, including top management, where they involved them in profit share, so they had skin in the game as well for the company to do well. We were constantly reminded that we're a small share of a large cake, and that a small share of a large cake is often better than a large share of a small cake, and that we needed to keep growing. So, lastly, the media coverage was good. We basically it was good, and one of the things for the sister city relationship is I'm not sure what had gone on prior, and I know that Toowoomba came over a lot more than we did, but what was good was there was a really good article that showed that we're looking at economic development, that they could actually see themselves as handy and useful, and they were encouraging us to build that relationship to actually use their contacts into Asia, into even into value-add manufacturing to learn and grow Wanganui a lot faster than it had taken them to do their area. And that's it. Any questions? Sorry, I know I probably took longer than 8 minutes. And the questions can be for any of us, because we've got farmers here.
Helen?
Oh, yes, thank you, Colleen. Very comprehensive. I would be very interested to hear comments from Neil and Janine and Robert, if they've got a few minutes, about what they got out of the trip. And yeah.
Okay, probably there's 2 or 3 main things. One is the scale difference between here and Australia. Made us realise that to battle on a commodity market was pointless, and we need to be looking far more at niche markets. Another of the major differences was the attitude, the ethos of the local and national governments to supporting and encouraging their businesses to grow. Australia has the advantage of a lot of mineral wealth, and it does give them money to throw around. And they're putting it into developing their economies, both on a local and national scale, and it makes a massive difference. And it's something that I think this country needs to look at somehow. Wellcamp Airport was a classic example of it. It was about 48 million, was it, put up by
Yeah, put up by the Wagners.
the Wagner brothers, and the government put in another 48 million. They've got this magnificent airport. It's ahead of any airport I've seen on any scale anywhere, really. And the opportunity for Wanganui to back on that, I think is huge. We're well placed. There's not really any good central North Island export hubs. Ohakea don't want to know. They're military. Palmerston's got that nasty hill behind it that makes it a bit dangerous. Waikato is too far away. There's a huge amount of production in the sort of Horowhenua, Manawatu, Wanganui area that has potential to be marketed and shipped to Asia. And we could add a bit of concrete to that little strip out there, up into the sandhills, and be flying direct to connect up with these guys at Wellcamp and into the Asian market with a very fast turnaround and very little product loss. And I think there's just huge opportunities there.
Extraordinary. Back in the mid-60s, John Paulson was advocating along those lines. So 70 years on and we're still talking about the same thing.
How many years?
Well, I think that was about in the 60s. So 40 and 20, it's 60. Got the maths well.
It's the can-do attitude that will achieve it, and these Wagner brothers had that can-do attitude. And instead of listening to the naysayers and not being able to do it, they just got on and did it. They bought a farm that was 400 hectares, something like that, and just bulldozed the farm and built this airport. It's extraordinary. And everything's just grown around it. It's developed its own hub.
Okay.
The
Oh, yeah, carry on.
yeah,
No, carry on.
the Dalby. Yeah, when we went to the Western Downs Council, the attitude of council there was different to anything I'd seen. Toowoomba was slightly that way as well, but one of the first slides they put up was don't regulate, enable. And so if you went to the council with a proposal, they'd say, okay, where are you now? You're here. Where do you need to get to? You need to get to here. We'll help you through that process. We'll take care of that process. You just do the build of the business. Instead of here, or any other New Zealand council, I'm not being critical of Wanganui especially, but if you go to build something or do something, all you've got is a heap of barriers in the way that you've got no idea how to get round. And a lot of them are barriers that don't even need to be there by regulation. They're just put there. And we need to change the ethos, need to change the thinking of, get rid of the tall poppy and start building and promoting. And it's a very different ethos. It's incredibly different. And it's a council sort of basis rather than rural, but you need to get somebody like the Dalby Area Council over here to show you how it's done. It was amazing.
It was a transformation from regulator to enabler.
Yeah. But it was an attitude.
We can have a crack at Horizons on that at some point.
Absolutely.
Out in your own backyard, David.
Absolutely.
Oh, dear.
Yep.
No, all I was going to say is I wondered to start with why I was going over part of it, but it was a thoroughly informative trip with what we saw, things we went to. The whole thing was very good.
Robert, have you got any comments?
Basically,
Sorry, Robert, you have to put on your mic. It's not right. Oh.
It was that council being an enabler rather than a regulator. They've got a dual role, really. They've got certain regulations to enforce, but it's rather than being the rules say, this is how we're here to actually make change and enable things to be done. So that was that can-do attitude.
Yeah.
That 34 years ago when I came to New Zealand, I recognised, and we've lost it.
Yeah.
So we've got to get it back. We've lost our mojo. The local mayor of that council, the previous local mayor, was called Positive Paul. He was known as Positive Paul. So, and it said it all, didn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, thank you. That's an extraordinary message, which I think will resonate with everybody. So if any of the, Grant, you've got something you'd like to mention?
Oh, just one, from all of the visit, how do we start by how do we get runs on the board with these things? Okay? What is the one thing that you can pick out to say, yeah, we can go run with that right now?
So one of the things is just even gathering data. So in the middle of November, we're launching an export map survey, so we can actually understand what export looks like in Wanganui, who the exporters are, who the potential exporters are, so we can actually figure out where their markets are, how they're actually getting them there at the moment, what opportunities, what does that look like, and then following that, once we've got all the data, we'll figure out common pathways, common markets, and then how could, does that mean that, for instance, does the airport need activation, but we need the data first to understand that. So we've got some idea. I just wanted to also add that from the people that came on the delegation on the way back, it was amazing. They were all like, "How do we send our kids? We're getting long in the tooth." Or actually, I don't think they used those words.
Yeah, we did.
yeah. But how do we send our kids on this? Because it was really eye-opening. And like the thing is, there's even agri-tech tours. There's just all sorts of things that could be organised from our relationships. If you remember Nilesh that worked with us at Wanganui and Partners, she now works for TSB, so she works for the Economic Development Agency as their trade and marketing manager. No, it's not marketing, but it's to do with connecting businesses. So she's like the perfect person to have on the ground. She knows us, she knows Wanganui really well, and she's always thinking of us when she's talking to other businesses. How can they get into New Zealand? Oh, we'll see if we can get into Wanganui first, and the other way around. So it's a brilliant opportunity that we've got, and we need to grasp it with both hands.
So you're working on some follow-up.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll be really keen to hear how the results of that too. Thank you.
Just one last thing, David. I think probably one of the most important things is keep this relationship with Toowoomba alive. I think has very strong possibilities.
Thank you for those comments. I don't think I'll. No. Thank you for your presentation. It's been really good, and so as I say, we'll be keen to be involved in any or hear about any follow-up. And so thank you for all giving up your time.
Thank you.
And
Sorry, could I make a comment?
Yes,
Yep.
certainly.
Look, I found that really informative, and I want to thank you, Colleen, for bringing that report in, and Janine, Neil, and Robert for your input. What I would really like so council's doing its visioning work at the moment, and I would really like to ensure that the Rural Community Board, and especially this discussion around don't regulate, enable,
to be something that we really push in that visioning work in terms of that rural community. And so what I'd like is an action that we take away, because I actually can't remember how the Rural Community Board or the rural sector is going to feed into that visioning work. So if we could just have an action that we ask for inclusion in the visioning work for the rural community, and then we can bring that particular thing, and maybe that might involve bringing in back, Neil and Janine and Robert and that specialist group that will feed in. I just can't remember.
Well, certainly if we involve Colleen
Yeah.
in that, then we can, she's got the contacts to bring in the relevant people.
That's right.
Yeah, and there's also the Leards and the Taylors that came with us.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah. This is a really key time to bring in those discussions. I think that was really, really relevant.
So would you like to include it in a recommendation, or we just
I think
make sure
we need
we've
an
got
action. I think it's an action that
Have you got any ideas on how we document this so that it...
I record the actions and I'm sending out an action sheet following the meeting like I did last time.
Okay, you've captured that really,
so
hasn't it?
we've taken it, so it's under control.
Yeah, that'd be fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for raising that, Helen. Yep. Thank you. So we've got one last item, and oh no, sorry. We have to. I need a mover and seconder for the recommendation that the Wanganui Rural Community Board receive the report Agribusiness Update October 2024. So we've got a mover, Grant, and a seconder, Helen. Any further discussion? So I'll put that recommendation. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
And against? That is carried. Thank you. So the last item on the agenda is regarding the Fordell School update. And so we're going to hear from Mark Ellingham, who is our, what's your title? Roading...
Transportation Manager.
Oh, yes, it's written right in front of me. So Mark is our new Transportation Manager, and you've been here two and a half months, something like that?
I think this is my 7th week, Chair David.
Okay, so it's a good opportunity for us to meet Mark. Thank you.
Kia ora.
So yes, if you could just give us an update on this. We'll be coming back to you with lots of issues, but this is the first one we're going to hear from you. Thank you.
In the interest of brevity, I've been to the site with a couple of my staff. We've met with the principal of the school. After having a look at the agenda, I wasn't sure if I'd actually been at the right place because it obviously has a name. But where I was looking at, obviously there's a gate and a pullover area, not a bus stop. And it didn't seem to be a formal bus stop. My first questions along those lines, having dealt with this for many years, are over time there have become bus stops and informal bus stops. So we checked to actually see if this was a formal bus stop as such, not somewhere where people just pull over. It is a formal bus stop with bus route. Having a look at the road geometry and the like, distances and that are really quite good. Looking at the route and where to pull over and the gateway and the like, it seemed a good position for a bus stop, with no requirement to move it as such. My understanding of the issue, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that as the bus is pulling in, the children are hopping off the bus and cars are speeding past the bus, and also that some parents are parking on the opposite side of the road. And of course, when the children are walking across the road to the cars, or to their waiting parents and caregivers, should there be a car doing excessive speeds, this would be quite unsafe. The action that I've taken for this is we're putting up some signage in regards to ensure that any car coming along can see that there is a bus stop. In my own mind, the difficulty around this is if a car was driving along the road and there was a bus on the side of the road, putting a sign in front of the bus to tell them that there was a bus there, realistically, if they were going past, they would know that there was a bus there. Enforcement, to me, is the main way in which to do this. Obviously, being a reasonably rural road of that time, generally I've found with these issues that the people who are going through those spaces are generally similar people and local at that point of time. If we can have a police presence off and on, that will help regulate the traffic going through. And also speaking to the principal, trying to get the parents to park on the same side of the road as the bus would then allow them to not have to cross the road and would make it safer. The only difficulty with that, and I'm not sure how many cars actually pull in, but where you look at the bus stop and the shoulder of the road coming back, if those cars were parking there waiting for the bus, they may take up a bit of extra space for the bus to pull in. But as a rural bus stop, the main issue around that is driver behaviour, and that is probably the most difficult thing in my role to change. It's easy to build a bridge or build a road, but to actually try and change the behaviour of people around that. And obviously we all know that when passing a bus, I think it's 20 kilometres an hour we're supposed to do.
So is there a space for a reminder sign each side of it?
Yeah, we are. There isn't a 20 kilometre reminder sign as such. There is a bus stop sign which we can put up. And like I said, enforcement. If you went through there at 100 kilometres an hour and you're supposed to be doing 20, that's 80k over the speed limit. I don't know what the calculation on the fine or loss of licence would be, but that would be reasonably severe. The difficulty it is that I have found in these situations historically that generally is locals, and the best way I've found to do that is with social pressure and that for those who actually live in and around the area, and hopefully with reminders from the school through newsletters and the like, if they can get across. But it is a very difficult one to resolve, and realistically, because it is quite a long straight road, people may feel the need to just pull across a bit, give the bus a bit of width and not reduce their speed, which we do know is illegal.
Is it worth this board asking for a proposal for extra signage reminding of the rules?
If we did that, I think we'd be doing that across a lot of areas throughout the entire district. I think, to me, having a police presence intermittently, I think is probably the best way in which to try and get people to adhere to the speed. Like we just had a conversation in regards to enabling over enforcement. I don't know how I enable people to drive slower.
By
without
reminding them of the rules.
Without enforcement. In any given time, I've had one already today in regards to a bridge. People complaining and people bringing forward areas of where I guess errant behaviour is, whether it be people at night deciding to enjoy themselves more on the road than legally they're allowed, or whether it be a bridge that come to my notice today where it's posted at 30 kilometres an hour and people aren't taking any notice of it. This is human behaviour. I think that I would like to think most people know what the road rules are when they are driving, and there is a personal choice that they are making to not adhere to them. And once again, I don't like enforcement myself. It's not something I would normally go down. But informing our friends in the police of areas of concern and allowing them to monitor those areas, I think is a good option for us. And there will be 2 signs put up as well. But like I said, if there's a sign up and a bus sitting there at the same time, you should notice the bus.
So the rule is, if you put the bus stop sign up and there's a bus there, the road code says passing traffic should reduce speed to 20 kilometres an hour.
Passing any bus at any stage is 20 kilometres an hour.
Okay. Well, that. Oh, yeah. Okay. So at this stage, you're going to put up signs saying it's a bus stop.
Yep.
Or school bus stops. You see them all over.
Yeah,
the place.
a school bus stop sign.
Okay.
I do understand that, in my professional opinion, it's a good thing to do. It helps identify things. But in my professional opinion, I don't think it will change behaviour at all. Because, like I said, if a sign so big and a bus, the difficulty, I think, is also, as you may have just mentioned, how do we inform the public in general that passing a bus is 20 kilometres an hour.
Okay, well, thank you for that. That last point is probably maybe an issue that our board can have a wee think about, because there may be other sites in our rural region, and so it may be something we can put some thought into for that, and possibly some other sites in perhaps regards to education.
And through yourself, Chair David, I understand that obviously we're in committee and on being filmed. Our friends in the media may wish to be watching this. Should they wish to publicise the fact themselves locally
Yes.
and remind people of what that is, that would be appreciated as well.
Thank you. Any other questions anyone would like to ask Mark? Okay.
Oh, just one thing.
Yes, Bill.
Thanks very much for all your work there, Mark. You've identified the problem. You've come up with some possible solutions, and you've hit on the nub of the problem, and that's community or behaviour. That's the nub of it, and I think our local community, our Fort El community, has certainly got some obligation to highlight that and bring that to people's attention. I think that will assist, and all the work that you've done in identifying the problem and offering the solutions is a solution that can work.
And if I may, through committees like this and communities is some of the best ways to enforce this. Obviously, this is not my first rodeo. I've worked at a few different councils. And for example, we're just talking about Toowoomba. In some of the Australian areas, especially within, say, some of the ethnic communities, a policeman popping around in the middle of the day in full view of the neighbours can actually bring about a lot of social change. Within a community out there, a conversation within that community, within their own circles somehow, can bring about change. Yourselves know those communities and are part of them. Passing that information back through the community, I think, probably makes a better social change than trying enforcement.
Okay, thank you. There's a couple of things there. One, we do liaise with the rural police a bit. We can discuss with them. And the other thing is we're in the point of organising community, various community groups having meetings with them at some stage in the next 2 or 3 months. So it's a topic we can raise at those. So thank you very much for your help with that.
Thank you, Chair David, and thanks to the committee.
Okay, so if we could have a mover and a seconder, please, for the recommendation that the Wanganui Rural Community Board receive the report, John Tripe Bus Stop at Fordell School. Update, October 2024. Can I have a mover, Brian, and a seconder, please, Michael? Any further discussion on that? Okay, I'll put that motion. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And against? Carried. Thank you. So I will now invite Judd to close the meeting with a karakia.
Kia ora, David. Karakia wakamutanga. Inu ki te uru tapu nui. Kia watea kia mama te naka te tinana. Te wairua i te ara takatu. Koia rā e rongo waka irihira ake ki runga. Kia watea, ai rā kua watea, hau pai Māori. Release us from this mantle of this meeting so that we can stand free, clear in heart, spirit and body, make it happen, peace reign to all. Kia ora tātou.
Thank you, Judd, and thank you all for your attendance.
Thank you.
Sorry it's gone on a bit over time.